The final two chapters in Northouse, for this week is chapter 5 and 6. Chapter 5 talk about task-oriented leadership and relationship-oriented leadership. Task-oriented leaders or managers are more goal-oriented. They have to-do lists. They focus on accomplishment. They are really about getting stuff done. They focus on the structure, the process. They have what's called a production orientation, so they're interested in the product and how it's being produced and the processes and systems being utilized during production. Whereas the relationship-oriented manager is more interested in his or her people. He wants to connect with the individuals that work for him or her. They're more likely to be in the moment, less about doing the to-do list and writing down everything that they need to do, but rather embracing, okay, what's going on right now? What are the needs of my people right now? They have an employee orientation, and whereas task-oriented have the concern for production, relationship-oriented have a concern for people. It's important to know that it's not an either-or. The best managers are what they call mid-range. They have a blend of both task-oriented and relationship-oriented. If you're only task-oriented, you're going to be disconnected from your people and likely have employee issues, morale issues, turnover issues. But if you're only relationship-oriented and not task-oriented, you're likely not going to be meeting the goals of your organization or your company. So it's really important to blend both. I like this chart because it just shows you the difference between concern for production and concern for people, and people that have a high concern for production and a high concern for people is what this managerial style calls team, and that's you develop high levels of commitment from your people, but you also aim for win-win outcomes. And so you can see when you're low concern for people, low concern for production, you have a more impoverished style, and so you'll see the middle of the road or the team focus are the two best managerial styles. In chapter 6, Northouse is starting to talk about what are the actual skills required to be a leader. We've talked about the theories, we've talked about the traits, we've talked about the different philosophies, but these are the skills that are really needed for individuals to thrive as managers or leaders. And so there's 3 categories that Northouse talks about, and that's administrative, interpersonal, and conceptual. Administrative is about managing your people, your resources, the budget, and also having that technical competency. So we need that. Leaders need to be able to be administrators. They need to hire people. They need to fire people at times. They need to know how much money they have to spend, how much money they have coming in, all of those types of things. And then there's the interpersonal skills. These are people who are socially perceptive. They know how to relate to people. They can manage conflict that comes up in the workplace. And then something that Northouse talks about is the emotional intelligence. And this is a really important concept, and especially in nursing. And part of your discussion board for this week will be talking about emotional intelligence. And for those in our on-ground class, we'll be talking about emotional intelligence in much more depth in class. And so I want you guys to be paying attention to that part and how it relates to your role in nursing. And then lastly is the conceptual skills. This is leaders who can problem solve, but they also do strategic planning. So they're not just in the here and now, but they can think about, okay, where do we want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? And then they create that vision and articulate that vision to their employees. So I talked about emotional intelligence, and that we'll talk about this more in class and in your discussion boards. But emotional intelligence is really about recognizing the emotions in yourself and in others. And so this is one exercise that we could do or will do in class. For those of you that are online, you can think about just doing this in your own life. You don't actually have to write out the sticky notes, but just to think about, what are the emotions that you're experiencing today? How are you feeling? Kind of doing a mental check-in with yourself. We often don't do this, but it's really important to recognize, how are we feeling? What are our emotions? And how is our emotions, our mood, going to impact my work today? So, they often say check your emotions at the door, leave your baggage at the door, but we're human beings. And the reality is the stuff that we're dealing with does come into the workplace. So the best thing we can do is be aware of it and to think about how it might affect our work. So if I know that I'm not feeling great, maybe something tragic has happened in my family and I'm feeling down or sad or depressed, that's going to impact me when I show up as a nurse at work when I'm interacting with my patients. So just being aware of that and being able to monitor your emotions is really important. But then also, and as you guys know, as healthcare professionals, recognizing the emotions of others, even if they aren't able to articulate them themselves, being perceptive, looking at those nonverbals, asking some more questions to try to figure out what's wrong, that's really important too. That's part of emotional intelligence. So one major takeaway from this chapter 6 is that concept of emotional intelligence.